Hey everyone, I'm John Nepper, the Trust and Connection Maximizer. Welcome to another episode of 2 Talk Smart, where I am interviewing the movers and shakers, the heavy hitters of the Wisconsin chapter of the National Speakers Association. My guests will share their ideas and strategies about growing a successful speaking business and having fun doing it. Topics will fit into the National Speakers Association 4 E's of the speaking business, including enterprise, expertise, eloquence, and ethics. My guest today is Cheri Neal, who has spent over 30 years encouraging others to overcome obstacles. In full-time elected office as Zion Township Supervisor for nearly 2 decades, Cheri is responsible for coordinating social services for her community, leading, empowering, advocating, and connecting residents to resources, services, and solutions. Cheri's drive to make a difference broke down barriers between social service agencies by implementing Respond, a monthly networking luncheon for frontline workers of over 30 agencies in Lake County, Illinois. Cheri is also the co-creator of the Zion Benton Leadership Academy, which has infused her community with over 75 diverse, highly qualified new leaders. Cheri's strong passion and unwavering faith to help develop others goes far beyond her workday. She mentors, she supports and encourages everywhere she goes. She is a certified life coach and holds a master's in management and a certificate in leadership. She's an engaging and enlightening presenter, having spoken at the International Institute of Municipal Clerks Conference, multiple project management institutes, the Lake County Alliance for Human Services, North Dakota Clerks Conference, Wisconsin Credit Union Associations, and others. Most notably, Cheri is the past president of the National Speakers Association Wisconsin chapter, receiving one of the highest awards designated by the organization, the Master of Excellence Award. Her innate kindness and understanding, coupled with her candid coaching style, help move her clients and audiences alike to live life to its fullest. She is the published author of Seeds of Joy, How to Grow Zinnias and Your Zest for Life, and soon to be out, Messages of the Monarch, How to Find Our Wings and Fly. Hi, Cheri.
Hi, John.
Today I'm talking with Cheri Neal. Cheri and I know each other from the National Speakers Association, the Wisconsin chapter, and this is another episode of 2 Talk Smart. How are you today, Cheri?
I am doing really well. How about you, John?
Doing great. Doing great. I'm looking forward to this. We've had conversation before, and I think this is going to be really valuable for people who get a chance to watch this video. Tell me, Cheri, what's a little bit of your backstory? How did you come to speaking, and then how did you come to the National Speakers Association?
So actually, I am in my day job, I am in full-time elected office in Zion, Illinois. I'm the Zion Township Supervisor, which means I oversee social services. I'm elected just like the mayor, but he does streets and fire and police and those types of things, and I do social services. And so I was at a conference in Springfield, Illinois, and met this guy named Matt Booth, who was sitting at this table with a stack of books, and I went up to him and I asked him, well, what's your gig? And he shared with me that he was presenting a workshop at the conference, and it was his intention that he would be the keynote speaker next year. And this stirred up something in me that I cannot even tell you, that was so down deep. And I was like, so you mean to tell me that like you actually get paid for speaking? And he said, yeah. I was like, would you mind sharing with me like how you did that? Right. And he went and picked up a chair and brought it over and sat it down. And for the next 45 minutes, he shared with me his entire story, everything that he did. And then he said, if this is something that you really want to pursue, he said, I need you to check out the Wisconsin chapter of the National Speakers Association. He said, I know that there's one in Illinois. I live in Iowa, but driving to Wisconsin for this organization is the shortest way for you to achieve your goal. And so that was in November. I started attending the meetings in January. And then I ended up actually hiring a gal that convinced me if I worked with her as a coach, I would achieve my goal a lot faster than if I joined the academy. And so I worked with her for 6 months, dropped It was supposed to be $7,500, but she gave me a $500 discount if I paid by December. And when I got done with that 6 months, what I realized is that she wasn't a coach, she was a consultant. And everything that we had put together was what she would do if she were me, not what I would do in my passion. And so at first I was a little frustrated, feeling like I had wasted the money and the time. And I ended up not having to pay the last $1,500 because of recognizing that conflict. And she was in agreement with it. And so I took that $1,500 and I applied it and I joined the academy. And what I found was that was one of the most incredible placeholders for me, because in that 6 months, when you join the academy, you get to get a mentor. And when I looked at the list, at the time you got to have, you got to choose somebody from a list of mentors that would work with you. And so I looked on the list and Darcy Loma's name was on that list. And I just about hit the ceiling. I could not even believe my luck. And so I reached out to her. And about 20 minutes later, I get an email back from her saying, I have no idea how my name made that list. There's no way that I can mentor right now. I'm so sorry. And so I shot her back an email and said, thank you so much for your response. The best 20 minutes of my life just happened recently when I sat with the idea of you being my mentor. And thank you so much for that experience. It was amazing. Right. And so because of my response to how she offered, we ended up being really good friends. And anytime I make it up to Madison, we try and go for a long walk and just, share with each other and have some time together. But so then I went back through the list and the name Susan Young was on there. And I reached out to Susan, and I have to tell you, that was probably the most transformational call I've ever made in my life, because Susan, it was literally divine intervention with everything that Susan was able to do with me and for me. And so the academy is normally a 2-year program to graduate. It took me 3 years because I literally came in with nothing. I mean, I had this deep knowing that I was supposed to do this work, but I had no clue, right? I had a laundry basket full of ideas of what I could speak on or what I could do, but no way to put any of it together and figure it out. So yeah, that was kind of my journey into NSA Wisconsin.
So you mentioned some heavy hitters, and that's one of the things I say in my introduction too, is I'm talking to the heavy hitters in NSA, especially in our chapter, Darcy Loma, Matt Booth, and Susan Young.
Yeah.
Just to drop a few more names, who are some other people that have been really influential from our chapter that have helped you along?
Oh my gosh, Patty Hendrickson has been incredible. Lisa Hain has been just and not just supportive, how can I help you, but in my face, what are you doing? You're taking this path and you're circumventing your own success, right? So really calling me out on stuff. Kim and Jason Katecki, I love those guys. Oh my gosh. I really love their daughter Lucy, but Rowan Ben too. But Lucy and I have a special connection with horses. But they have been incredible. I'm going to miss names. This isn't even fair. Tina Hallis has been just a huge support of mine. The first year, so what we would have to do is we would have to give a presentation in front of some heavy, some high up presenters, and they would evaluate us. And when I had to give my presentation, that was actually Roger Wolkoff's first meeting that he went to. And when I did that presentation, I left there and I quit. I mean, I literally quit because
Wow.
it was horrendous. It wasn't bad, right? It wasn't pitiful. It was horrendous. And I knew that I had no business speaking. And so shortly after that, I got an email from Roger Wolkoff with 3 pages of just your only problem is you've got way too much information, and most speakers would kill for that problem. And so please don't give up on yourself. Here's some suggestions on things that you can do. Right. So just really grow. Oh, Carrie Lansford, one of the retired presidents. She actually went into ministry. Chip Lutz, who also went into ministry. There's just so many. I couldn't even, I know I'm going to leave people off the list, but Gary right? Everybody knows Gary
Mhm.
from Texas. So he's always been a uh, huge supporter of and cheerleader for me being successful. So yeah.
All of the things you've just said, all of the people you've just named, and all of the things they've done for you, that's really kind of the glue of the National Speakers Association. It's that whole spirit of CAVIT.
Yes, it is.
What would you say to people who are hearing all of those names and go, oh, I could never reach out to that person? How'd you do it?
Isn't that the craziest thing? And so it wasn't by me necessarily reaching out. It was by, we just became friends. Right. I mean, it was just the weirdest. There isn't this hierarchy in NSA Wisconsin. It's it's this it's like this 12-step group for people that like want to share their message in the world, and we're all just taking it one day at a time. We admit that we're powerless, right, and our lives are unmanageable, and how do we do this together? And yeah, it's just this most incredible kinship with people that, yeah, when I first came in, the idea of like Kim and Jason Katecki, right? Like even knowing my name, Darcy Loma, right? Oh my gosh, right? And now we're friends, right? I call when I'm like near Sheboygan or I'm near Madison and say, hey, you got any time? And if any of us have it, we drop everything and do what we can to be able to hang out. Never in a million years when I came into the NSA Academy did I think that would be my life. So yeah.
Do you find too, it's all about, all of these are happening, as you're saying, through just conversation with people?
Mm-hmm. It's
Just
really about wanting to help each other. And I gave Dan Thurman.
Dan Thurman.
Yes, Dan Thurman. I gave him a ride to the airport after he spoke to our club, and he said, you need to know that what you have at Wisconsin NSA is sacred. He said, a lot of the clubs have lost what you have. You guys truly, truly embrace the CAVIT spirit. You guys don't tit for tat, right? You're not trying to sell to each other to like, well, I can help you for this much, and I have this package and doing all this. It truly is, I'll give you an hour, right? I mean, Liz Green, I reached out to her to try and understand how to do a couple of things with Zoom. She dropped everything. No, and she gave, and anytime you call, I mean, it blows my mind how like we truly just want to help each other succeed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel that same thing. I started in NSA unofficially about 25 years ago, and I didn't follow through. But the thing that I always felt when I came to meetings, I was the same thing. I was blown away by how open people were, giving people were, the conversations we had at luncheons. And it was about 20 years later that I came back to it. And I'm so glad I did.
Mm-hmm. Timing is everything.
It is everything.
Yeah.
Talk about your time in academy. You said normally it's 2 years and it took you 3.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, I'm in full-time elected office. I had never, ever missed one of my board meetings, ever. But Academy happened to be the same night as my board meeting. I missed my board meetings because it meant so much being in this environment with people that could help me find my voice. Right. And just having the structure and this group of people that wanted me to succeed when I didn't even know what it looked like. I was thinking years and years and years ago, I went to some event and it was, the speaker, and it was an Oprah thing. And like, I had this like memory of sitting in the front seat, wishing somebody would see in me something like to say, you know what, you should be doing this work. Right. And it was just like this fleeting thought. And I think what puts me most in awe is it took me owning that thought, right, and taking the steps, and that there's this place that if you have this feeling that like you're called to share a message, there's this whole tribe of people. I mean, literally I felt like the ugly duckling, and I found my swan family, because especially with professional speaking, one, it's people's biggest fear over death, which I totally don't get. And I'm pretty sure if you like really put it up against each other, people would choose speaking over death. I'm sure of that. Right. But then if like you say that like you want to be a professional speaker, if that doesn't trip people up, then the whole, oh, so you think you're the it factor and you got something that people will pay for, right? I mean, that whole ego thing. And so to be in this space with people that are like, no, you can do this. You can do this. What you have to say is valuable and people want to hear it. And here's how you do it. I, I mean, even saying it out loud, I get a lump in my throat and I'm like, just in shock and awe that there's a place like that that helps us to become.
Right. I agree. Someone said one time that we are agents of hope, or we are agents of change and merchants of hope. And I love that, because I think that's the kinship I get with other speakers in the association. That's what people are trying to do, is bring about change in a way that brings hope, brings some light to people in a way that they can be better, feel better, live better, be more successfully. And I think that's so powerful.
I do too. Very good. Yeah.
What stalled you out 2 years instead of 3? What was the stall?
Me? Oh my
Okay.
God. The jerk in my head that was determined to keep me from taking this next step. The judgment I had over charging, over putting myself out there. That's what I loved about the expectation that you have 20 paid speaking engagements before you can graduate from the academy, because it truly builds a muscle that there is no way it can get built otherwise. There's just no way to build it, right? There's never an environment to be able to build that. And so getting enough confidence, really, I mean, it probably took me a year to figure out what I was even going to speak on. So Roger Walkoff is in Madison, I'm in Zion, Illinois, and he met me in Milwaukee at a Starbucks. And I literally, when I said I had a laundry basket full of ideas, I literally had a white laundry basket, and he met me at Starbucks and we dumped it out on the table and sorted through it. And he helped me like fine tune it. And then I grounded myself to my house for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I wasn't coming out until I figured it out. And it wasn't until Sunday evening that I was sitting in my chair with my legs crossed and I looked down at my foot that has a monarch butterfly tattoo and the word believe. Right. And like I had this epiphany of like, what if it's so much simpler than I'm giving it credit for? What if it's really, really simple? What do I love talking about more than anything? What do I love talking about? And it was some of the trainings that I've been through that have just transformed my life, right? The 3 vital questions with David Emerald and Donna Zajac. And so thinking about that information, right? I put together 2 talks, how to move from crazy to crazy good, and drop the drama and create extraordinary outcomes. And so those were my 2 keynote presentations that I started working on in order to be able to do that work. And so, yeah.
What mistake do you think speakers make, especially new speakers, when they're trying to figure out what they talk about? When they're trying to figure out what is the message that comes from here? Or maybe it doesn't for them.
Well, so I think that's the biggest problem we have, is because we keep thinking from here, right? And this work isn't head work, it's heart work, you know? And so, because you can put together a whole presentation on something that you're smart about and that you know, but if you don't love it, if it's not something that like comes from your heart, it's not even fun, right? I mean, so, but I think the other, I don't want to call it a mistake. If I could go back and do this over again, right? The one thing that I would do different is I would let myself just be a learner, right? There was so much judgment. And I was recently at the Global Leadership Summit, and I don't remember who it was, but I always understood a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is that I already know it all, I don't need to learn anything else. And a growth mindset is you're a sponge to learn more information. Well, and I wish I could remember who said it, because we're at NSA and we always want to give credit to who speaks up. But come up, Heidi Grant. Dr. Heidi Grant. Okay. All right. So recently at Global Leadership Summit, it talked about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And what I always believed was that fixed mindset is I already know everything, and growth mindset is I'm open to learning new things. But what she explained is that fixed mindset is with the judge in place of like, I'm supposed to know this stuff already. And we beat ourselves down over not knowing. And growth mindset is more of the response of, I guess I didn't learn that yet. And what can I learn? And I remember one presentation I gave to a credit union association where I was still learning, right? And I left and I beat the pulp out of myself driving home. I mean, just beat myself raw. And as I'm driving, I was like, okay, stop, right? You can come up with a list of everything that you didn't do right, right? But for everything that you didn't do right, I get to come up with something that I did really well, right? And so I had 13 things that I didn't do right, but I came up with 17 things that I was really proud of myself that I did well, to try and just like address, the whole head game that I was doing to myself. And since then I've been through, it's called positive intelligence training with Shrazad Shamin. And I truly believe like I've unhooked that in my brain, but the amount of self-abuse that I gave myself trying to step into this field that most people don't even have the courage to say out loud that they would want to. I would, if I could do one thing differently, I would go back and be kinder to myself in this whole process.
That is such a powerful message. That is so powerful. And it's a mindset shift. Yeah. It's like, I have to be better to myself. I have to be kinder to myself, because something else you said was the word yet. Mm-hmm. I haven't learned this yet.
I haven't learned it yet. No.
Doesn't mean I'm not going to. I just haven't learned it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly.
And I bet if we lined up 100 speakers, they would say the same thing. Probably 95 out of 100 would say I was too hard on myself. I didn't believe in myself. I kept saying negative things about myself, and I believed everybody else was far better than I was.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the whole comparison thing and how they're so much better. And, we're just all doing the best we can with what we've got. Mm-hmm. And so, and I think that's probably one of the things that I say too, is there is the opportunity to judge ourselves compared to other people. And NSA Wisconsin tries really hard to make sure everybody knows that's not what this game is about. Right. Everybody's got their own goals and ideas of where they want to go and what they want to do, and find yours and let that measure be with yourself, not with anybody else. That's
really hard to do. That's mm-hmm. hard to separate and say, because on the outside, it looks like the person who's been speaking for 30 years just fell into it. Mm-hmm. Except what we didn't see was that progression of 30 years. We didn't see that person in the same place we were just starting out. We don't know what it was like. We don't know what their role was like. And it's a really hard thing mm-hmm. to step out of that mindset and say, I'm where I'm at because this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
And maybe my goal is to get there, or maybe my goal is to get someplace completely different, mm-hmm. but I have to be kinder to myself.
Yeah. And I think in doing that, like when in mental fitness training, they call it being in your sage mode versus your saboteur mode. When we're in sage mode, it might look like somebody got there really easily. They might have, because they stayed in that space where they were kind to themselves and curious and just had fun with it. And when you're in that energy, you attract people that want to help you and do that. And when you're in the whole victim mode and frustration, it's not fun. And NSA Wisconsin, if it's nothing else, it's fun. Right? I mean, our whole goal is we're not going to have fun. Let's not do it.
Exactly. And that was one of the pillars of your presidency for NSA Wisconsin. We're going to have fun doing it.
Yeah.
And I agree. If we're not having fun doing it, if I'm not enjoying this and I'm beating myself up, then I have to ask the question, why am I doing it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or how can I get to the place where I can let go of that judgment and have some fun?
Well, I think that's what was so critical to me with the support network, right? Because I was beating myself up, but there was nobody around me reinforcing it. It was the opposite, right? They were the ones that were, cheering me on and telling me I can do it and take it easy on myself. And so having, the membership there to counterbalance what I was doing to myself was really, that's why I call it a 12-step group, because it was so, I would have never, ever, ever taken this path without that group.
I think sometimes that's those people holding up a mirror to us and saying, here's what you're saying
Mm-hmm.
to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And letting us really see that, hear that. It's often amazing when someone says something like, did you hear what you just said about yourself?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Right?
But when
Yeah.
they play it back with a kind heart, with a supportive, loving heart.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. And we learn so much about ourselves when we're willing to do that for each other.
What's another moment or a person, something that somebody said to you that, like you said, stopped you in your tracks, changed your direction, helped you feel better about yourself? Give another example of that if you can think of one.
Well, actually, I'd been in the academy for a while, and it was something that my daughter actually said to me. And she pointed out to me, my sister said the same thing. So people that were the closest to me, I was so determined, right, and pushing to do this and do it right. They pointed out that I have a different voice. So when I'm being sincere and I'm being like just centered and having a conversation, there's this voice. But when I'm like really trying to be somebody that I really want to be, and right, and they were like, there's one voice that repels us and there's one voice that draws us. Right. And so at first I was like wounded by it. Right. I was like, what do you mean? Because I didn't understand. But then I started just sitting in it and hearing myself and playing with it. And it was really, it helped me a lot to realize when I'm in have to or trying to be somebody. Right. It's like this whole, and when I'm in my head, it's 100% when I'm in my head. Right.
Yeah.
And when I'm in my heart and I'm just sharing and I'm just relating with people, I get to show up in a whole different way.
And like you said, people feel that.
Mm-hmm.
Not they hear it, but they feel it.
I
I
feel it
think people
first.
feel the
Yeah.
authenticity. And I
Yeah.
think that's why some speakers draw people to them. And like you said, some people repel them
Mm-hmm.
because they feel both of those things, but they want to be drawn to the person who's being authentic because it speaks to that place in them.
But and I guess that's the thing that like boggled my mind is like authenticity and all these words, but you know what I mean, to try and like how does it actually, because all the time I thought I was being authentic, but you don't know what you don't know, right? And so it's actually like in living through this and just taking the next step and being open to information from people that it just like helps you to like move, and get a little bit deeper to kind of know yourself and how things can play out. So
Isn't that really interesting too, that sometimes our teachers are the people closest to us, like your daughter?
Mhm.
My daughter did the same thing to me. I was ruminating about, should I go to a different job in the school district? I did for 6 months. She was in 8th grade. She looked at me. She said, Dad, you're always telling people to step out of your comfort zone. Why don't you listen to your own words?
Ouch.
I walked into my principal's office the next day. He said, I'm your man. I took that. Like they
Wow.
say, sometimes our teachers are standing right next to
Oh
us.
my God. My kids have been my greatest teachers, my
Yeah,
greatest teachers.
yeah.
So there's one other thing I want to share that I would do differently if I started over again. So I was all caught up in the whole money thing, right? And like the validation of like how much money you make. Um, but I wasn't in integrity with it, right? Because I was like asking for as much as I could get. But I didn't feel like I was worth the value with what I was asking for. Everybody told me I was worth this value. And so I would put it out there. Then I would go and speak and I would leave. And I knew I wasn't in integrity, that I wasn't a $2,000 speaker yet, right, in the academy. And so one of the things I tell people is that there's huge, it's credibility currency, right? And you have to earn your own credibility currency. Nobody can earn that for you. And so as you're putting yourself out there, like be like at a heart level, when I show up, am I earning this? Does this feel like the right amount to be able to do? And if it's not, don't, because you're just fooling yourself. Right. And I think it's really important that we don't try and fool ourselves, right? That we like just really stay in line and in integrity with ourselves as we do this work.
Staying in integrity is really important. And money is one of those places where I think a lot of us fall out of that. Or like you say, people say, well, you should be asking this much. But Lisa Sasevich says that's our having level. And we really can't ask for more than we're okay having, or we're okay receiving, as Bob Berg talks about too. So important, and so important
Yeah.
to be in integrity with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Absolutely.
that goes up, right? I mean, you do it for this amount. And after a few times, it's like, wait a minute. No, I'm good. I'm better. I can go to this level. And you have to be willing to like creep it up. You can't, you don't listen to what everybody else says. Listen to your own level, but listen to everybody else with your value, right? Because all of that comes in to be able to help us to slowly build our confidence. I love, I had high octane courage. I mean, high octane courage that I was fueling on forever. And then one day I had confidence. I didn't need courage anymore. You don't need courage if you're confident, right? But it took all of that high octane courage to get to a place to where then one day I was like, oh my God, I got this. I got this. I'm good. Right. And
That
it
is
will come.
such a great distinction
Yeah.
between courage, because you do have to have courage to kind of get you out there, but to have the confidence to step in the ring and go, I got it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got it.
And but
Great
it doesn't
distinction.
come unless you're just willing to show up. Just take the next step. And every single step that you take, one day you're going to cross this line and we're like, oh my God, how did I get here? And it's like, are you kidding? You took all of those steps to get here. Right.
Mhm.
So yeah. Yeah. Really good.
Really great things, I think, for people in the Speakers Academy to hear, people who've been doing it for a while too. Your message is so on point about having courage, about being in integrity, about speaking from an authentic voice. And really, I hope the people listening to this interview are hearing those things, because we tend not to talk about fees in NSA, but we should, because fees are so important, because it's what we do. But the things you just said about fees put it in such a great perspective about, you'll get there, but maybe you need to wait until you're there, or until you feel like you've crossed some sort of finish line to ask for the next level up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really hoping people hear
Yeah.
those things, because they're profound. The things you're saying are really spot on.
Thank you. Well, and that's what I love about the Academy is with the goal of 20 talks, the first few talks, right? We're doing, one of my talks was to our local Kiwanis group. They paid me $10 in breakfast, and it qualifies, right? But that I had to ask for it. I had to tell them I needed to get paid, right? And so like slowly creeping up. And as you do more and more, you get closer to 20, your confidence has built up. Be like, okay, you know what? Now I'm worth $2,500 to do a talk, or $3,000 for, to do a talk. The first time that like I got paid to get on an airplane and fly to North Dakota to speak to the clerks conference, I still have that envelope framed in my at home, right? Because it was such a big deal that I had finally arrived as somebody that they would pay to fly someplace to be able to give a talk. It was a really, really huge moment for me.
Very huge moment. Yeah, that first time is
Yeah.
significant. It's like that first dollar. And my first dollar in speaking came from my daughter, the one who
Ah,
told me to step out of my comfort zone. I have it framed because it came from her. She said, "Here,
that's
you just
cool.
got paid for this speaking engagement." But
That's
that's
so,
where it came from.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So Cheri, can you think of like the one thing or one or two things that people in Speaker Academy, or people pursuing this path of being a professional speaker, need to keep forefront? You've already, it can be just repeating what you've said, because you've said so many good things, but like kind of this thing, what do you think people need to keep in mind more than anything else?
So I never intended to be a full-time speaker. Right. I have a full-time job. I have a lot of other passions that I have. I have a lot of other things that I'm doing, but I have this deep passion for speaking. Right. And so I needed to commit my heart full-time to getting to the place to be confident, to where now I can do it or not do it. Right. I can volunteer it, or I can get paid for it. It's part of my repertoire to be able to do this work. But I think, and maybe I'm a freak of nature, or maybe the person that doesn't have this is the freak of nature, but I think there's something really big in us that it's nearly impossible to overcome. Right. Unless we like commit 100% to it. Right. I just had this really weird thought. So I raised monarch butterflies, and they say that in nature, a monarch butterfly egg has a 1% chance of becoming a butterfly. 1%. right? But if they have support, right? And I have a butterfly box and I raise monarch butterflies, you can see my box right there. If they have support, if there's people that are willing to support them, the chances go up to like 90% of them, growing their wings and flying. Right. And I feel like that's exactly the same thing with NSA, especially our academy is so unique. Oh my, it's a unicorn in itself, right? And I would say that, if you want to do this work, commit to NSA Academy 200%. Be there, show up, do the work, right? Ask for help. I do a different presentation on wishes, right? Write it down, imagine it, picture yourself being there, share it, and ask for help. And taking advantage of the speaker lab, right? Go and make a fool of yourself and let people give you feedback so that the next time you make a fool of yourself still, but it's not as bad, right? And then before you know it, you're the one that everybody's looking to for like, oh my gosh, did you see how they did that? The first time I saw Matt Booth speak, to be honest, I was like, yeah, oh, he's okay, right? Second time I was like, oh, he's pretty good. The third year I saw him on stage, I about fell over. He was so amazing. I mean, just all of the little intricacies. You could tell he had worked so hard on honing his message. Just stay in the game, take the next step. Don't give up on yourself because the world needs these new messages desperately. All of the old propaganda and storyline that we're hearing, the only way our world is going to change is if we find our voices and share it. So don't give up.
Cheri, that's a perfect place for us to stop because I want that thought to keep hanging in people's minds. Take the next step. Don't give up. Do Academy 200% because the messages we bring are really important for the times we're in.
Absolutely. And ask for help. That's the coolest thing about Academy is it gives you this whole membership to be able to ask people for help.
Yeah.
So, and don't wait for anything. Just do it. Just the worst somebody will say is no, I can't, I don't have the time for it, but they'll always remember you as being somebody that asked, right? And there's something in the universe about like, were you willing to ask for what you needed and what you wanted? And we tend to get more things coming our way when we're willing to put ourselves out there and ask.
I always tell my daughters that possibility exists in the asking.
Yes.
You don't ask, you don't get.
You don't get. Yeah. My business manager always says a closed mouth don't get fed.
That's right. Cheri, this has been a wonderful conversation. I am so excited for people to hear what you have to say.
Oh, it's a delight speaking with you, John. And just, go NSA Academy and NSA Wisconsin. It's just changed my life forever. So grateful.
Thanks, Cheri.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of 2 Talk Smart. Look for more episodes in the very near future. I'm John Nepper. Let's change the world one conversation at a time.